why is grit so important? Because life is freaking hard and you need some grit under your feet in order to do hard things over a long period of time. And here's where, like, the word resiliency, right? And grit, a lot of people don't understand that. They're really simple. Resiliency is just about bouncing back, but it's bouncing back not to a what, it's a who.
How do you help people to dig for gold and find out who they really are?
I think Dr. Andy says that there's like 3 different parts of authenticity, and it's, understanding what do you value most of all? What are those core values and so on. And then it's this idea of, establishing that self-awareness. The third part of authenticity then is using your strengths, as it were, right? A vocalist or writer, whatever that might be, using those intrinsic strengths to have a virtuous impact on someone.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today we are joined by a man named David Ask. And for those who don't know David is a successful entrepreneur whose product, that's the Stack Guard Plus, is now available in over 3,700 retail stores, including the giants like the Home Depot, Lowe's, and True Value Hardware. David helps people to bounce back quickly from life's challenges, all through a unique perspective known as your unique lens. David believes that understanding who you are on a very unique level is the key to understanding why you do what you do, a shift that is ultimately life-changing. He often says, never start with why, start with who. And he is currently authoring a new book titled The Guardians of Grit, which aims to empower fathers in raising uncrushable young children. Very interesting conversation ahead. If you take away even just one thing from this conversation with David and I, please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. Without further ado, David Ask, all the way from Tennessee, right outside Nashville. Great to have you, David.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. This is an honor to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. We talked for a few minutes before the show. You're a very multifaceted guy. It's clear that you do understand who you are at a very deep level. And I want to ask you some questions about how we can understand who we are. But you're familiar with the book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'll just ask you this way. Why is Simon wrong when he says
it's a great question. And obviously when I say never start with why, start with who, it sounds like I'm picking a fight with Simon. And I mean, what a great guy. I mean, such a ton of wisdom. And, and of course he even has surrounded himself with a lot of people who are, bring so many great insights. So one of the things that has been really transformational for me just in the last, 6 years, really, I joined a mastermind group called Iron Sharpens Iron, started by Aaron Walker. And one of the guys that was that's in my kind of my core group, I facilitate 2 groups inside of ISI, but is a guy named Dr. Andy Garrett. And he's a clinical psychologist out in California. And he's just become a dear friend, and really, we've partnered together now to help people just really build this, unique self-awareness and really understand what it is and why it matters, and how you can really, understand your why, not just a why that seems compelling, but yours, and to establish that with radical clarity. So I'm not necessarily going to say Simon is wrong. I mean, again, a great influencer. I'll just say it that way. But I'll back into it this way. So the word authenticity, we'll just jump right into the deep weeds here, Brandon. So where do we get the word authenticity? Comes from the word author. And so the words authenticity and identity, I think, are just largely misunderstood. I think a lot of people, think that, an identity is something that you achieve, meaning the rest of the world identifies you as something that's worthwhile, or somebody that is remarkable, somebody who accomplishes things, somebody who's wise, somebody who's, they start labeling you. And I understand, I mean, there is some of that going on, and it makes sense to observe something and talk about its characteristics. But what I think is really fascinating is the shift when you really understand a couple of things here. So I like popping a couple of bubbles. So the word authenticity comes from the word author, right? I didn't choose my eye color, my taste buds. I didn't choose my personality.
Mm.
How do we, I mean, we don't choose anything. How do we know that is absolutely bedrock true, like gravity? If you have children, you know full well within, I mean, literally weeks, months, whatever, that they're so vastly different from their sibling. You can tell their little essence and their spirit that is just so different. I've got two kids who are teenagers now, but I mean, Parker is, he was just this little cute, feisty little rascal, within just a few months. And Kate, was just this sweet little cuddly thing, I mean, her, and even now as they, as they're growing, I mean, they're just wonderfully different. And here's what's fascinating: when you're that young, right? 0 to, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 or something, you're not thinking about being authentic like we are, right? We're not stuck in, little kids aren't stuck in their head trying to generate something, or, oh, I need to be authentic and I need to, blah, blah,
True.
all the nonsense. They're just doing their deal. And my siblings, I mean, we're so different from one another. And growing up, the things that my brother was, his personality traits and the things, I mean, he's like really competitive, type A, just, linear, analytical. And hey, I'm just happy to be here. Like I'm way more people driven, inspiration driven, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. So authenticity, author, right? You were made. You did not make you. And I think it's really important to understand that. But when you start to identify, right, the word identity, what is it, about you that is absolutely bedrock?
Mm.
And I'm talking, we often talk about, core values, right? Well, what does your core happen to value most of all in this life? And if you ask someone, like in the English language, there's, I don't know, 80 or something potential core values, and some of them have some overlap, of course. But here's the fascinating thing about just this little topic. So say you have all the core values on a page and you start checking off the ones that resonate with you. Well, then you narrow that down to 20, then you narrow that down to 10, then you narrow that down to 5 or 6, and you prioritize those. Your core values are going to be different than mine. And what's interesting is I just love to say this, like, like, Brandon, what does your core happen to value most of all in this life? What is it that gives your goosebumps? What is it that breaks your heart? What is it that infuriates you? Uniquely, those answers are going to be so different from the person next to you. So, to answer your question about, why is Simon Sinek wrong, which is funny, it's, unless you've established that, how in the Sam Hill would you even know what your why is?
Yeah.
Because it might not be tied to you. Your why might be your dad's why. It might be Joe Rogan's why. It might be,
Yeah.
some influencer who's just seems really compelling and powerful. You just adopt whatever they're thinking because you feel so weak inside. So I love, through Dr. Andy's framework, and we walk people through this. And my Guardians of Grit book is, really revolves around, his framework. I like this. I like this idea of, when we coach people, by the way, I say, hey, let me introduce you to yourself. And it's basically just asking the right questions, right? So that they understand, authenticity, and hopefully get a little bit of insight on the author. But then here's what's fascinating: that word authenticity leads to the word authority. You tend to have a sense of agency, that inner locus of control, when you've predetermined the things that are absolutely bedrock to what you're going to say no to, yes to, things that break your heart, the things that make you mad. What are you willing to die for? What is it that, and I think it's from a Nissan commercial, right? What is it that gives your goosebumps? Like,
Yep.
like what impact do you want to have? What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? All that kind of stuff. These aren't new questions, but what's fascinating is if you actually have someone that can ask you the right questions in the right way, you can identify, right? Identity, who you are uniquely, and then your not only does your why make sense, then your what is your what, and the how and all that stuff really starts to um, come from you. Well, I'll say one more thing about this to really clear things up. How do you know that you've identified your own authenticity? Well, guess what? Follow the clues. You start to feel natural. You start to feel genuine. You start to feel resilient. You start to feel free. Well, how do you know you haven't? Increased anxiety, depression. You feel like you're not living the life you were meant to live. You're irritable and angry. You might be avoiding certain situations or people. You might suffer with imposter syndrome. You've got these juxtapositions that authenticity just feels very natural and really good and just feels really great to be me. And if you've got a question mark inside of you on any of these, you will feel it. And guess what? Everybody around you will as well.
Wow. Yeah, Tony Robbins has a quote that you reminded me of it when he says, "Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure."
Oh,
And he talks about how he knows billionaires and millionaires and quote unquote wealthy people, or I should say financially rich people who aren't happy people. But on the flip side, he knows people who others would look at from the outside in and say, "Oh, that person's struggling, but that person's happier than the billionaire." Right. And maybe, I'm just hypothesizing, maybe it's because that person better knows himself. That person knows that they don't want to be a billionaire. They don't want to be a millionaire. They want to raise their kids, provide a good living for them, help them understand themselves better, help them become what you call uncrushable. So to kind of sum up what you just said there, because a few things, you mentioned that we're born with, in a way, our essence, and we're born with who we are. And my son is 10 months, right?
yeah.
I have one child. His name is Leo. He's 10 months old. And he is very much his own character already.
Yeah,
Like
of
he's
course.
crawling around now. He's starting to pull himself up. But his personality is uniquely him. Like we didn't teach him how to be him. He just is him. And like what you said,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
he's not thinking about who he should be. He's not thinking about, oh, maybe I should be more like Swade from daycare or more like this person. But there comes a point in our life where we do begin to say, I want to be more like this person. I want to be like the Kardashians. Or me, as an example, when I was 18 and really when I was 21, when I discovered personal development and I was in a hard spot, I was like, I want to be like Tony Robbins. I want to be like Jim Rohn. I want to do what these guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I learned through experience that just wasn't me, right? There's different aspects of me that those people don't have that come natural to me. So there's a part that you're born with, but there's also a part that you consciously choose, which is your values. So correct me if I'm wrong, but are we consciously choosing our values, or are our values in a way baked into us? And by looking at the word that represents them, it means something to us. Like, tell me, are values something that we must consciously choose, or are we born with those in a way too?
I love that question. So I think it's a bit of both and. So for instance, I think that, the things that, children, if you were to ask, of course they have to, be able to use maybe more adult words to explain, certain things. But I think it's really fascinating when you start asking kids, even in, kindergarten and first grade, you know, about what they value or what they don't, or if you present a situation and you ask them, hey, what went wrong here, right? They're gonna start talking about, meanness and unfairness, and they're gonna start explaining some of those things that either are really great or that really suck. And so I think I'll be honest, I think it's largely these things are instilled in us. And here's what's fascinating though is, when you get to that, kindergarten, first, second grade, again, before that time, you're not really thinking about authenticity. You're just doing your deal. But what? Right? Then you get punched in the face, right? Life starts slapping you around, right? You get bullied, somebody calls you a name, or you witness something that's just like, what is that? And things start to, when we live in a broken world, that's all there is to it. I mean, we live in a fallen world. Well, here's what's fascinating is psychologists have this term called self-actualization. So, and again, I'm just kind of maybe processing this out loud with you here as as I'm going. But I think what's really neat is that when um, teenagers, right? Why in that 14, 15, 16, higher teenage years, why is there so much uh, discord, or at least potential for discord, between teens and parents? And it's because it's a natural process for self-actualization, right? They're
Mm.
pushing the boundaries because they're trying to see, where do I start and end, and where do they start and end? And they're sensing that tension of, wait, I'm leaving the house soon. I got to stand on my own 2 feet. I'm kind of scared, but I'm kind of excited. Well, you start feeling, some shifting sand. You're going to start looking for fat rocks to stand on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants uncertainty, right? Uncertainty is debilitating, and people will go to great lengths to remove uncertainty. On a basic level, by the way, I had a guy speaking at a conference, and he walks up to the crowd, and he first thing he does is he goes da 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 da, and he doesn't finish it, right?
Mm.
And he's walking around, and it wasn't 30 seconds, and somebody goes da da, and the whole crowd just burst into laughter. Why? Because our human brain cannot stand the open loop. We want to close that rascal as fast as we possibly can. So what's interesting is when teenagers, especially, and really into your early 20s, when you're self-actualizing, I believe you're actually going back to those younger years and anchoring to yourself again. And you're remembering, I think, emotions and neural pathways that feel natural and good and kind and noble, and you're just, you're finding that, wait a second, when I act in alignment with, you know who I was created to be, it just feels really good to be me. And you have to start then rejecting the pain in your life, that things that have happened to you, and just saying, even if it was from your parents, this was not good. I'm not going to repeat this, because
Mhm.
and the reason it wasn't good is because I was made in a way that doesn't resonate with that, from an early age, from day one. And so here's the interesting thing, though, is I don't think that your values and your essence, are, I'll put it this way: they're not galvanized in a silo. They're not galvanized because someone asks you great questions. I would say that they're identified,
Mm.
but here's what's fascinating is we um, we were made for relationships. Period. The entire point of life is relationships, or our relationships. It's The rest of it is a context to experience relationship in. Period. And so what's fascinating is we can't establish all of these things, in and of our own accord. And this is where it gets really beautiful, though, right? So why is it, that you get that lump in your throat, right? Follow the clues. Why is it that you get that lump in your throat, even as an adult, and especially as a kid, when you have someone, that you admire, that you look up to, and they say something like, hey, David, yesterday when you walked into the room and you started sharing in this capacity, or you said this and that, I could tell it came from a really deep place in you. And by the way, it had such a powerful impact. And I sure hope that you do more of that and say more of that. That was really fantastic. Well, what's really neat about that is they recognized that you acted in a deep place that was true to your nature. And then, it's like they held up a mirror and said, do you see what I see?
Yeah.
You're made of awesome. Can you imagine if every parent did that?
Yes.
My favorite quote, by the way, and I hope you take this into your lexicon, because I feel like you and I are tracking in a lot of ways here. By Benjamin Disraeli, he said, "The greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own." And I
Mm.
hope that me, as a father to Parker and Kate, I've tried my whole life to hold up that mirror to them and to validate, to name, to point out their greatest good, their riches, and to say, hey, hey, son, do you see what I see? You're made of something spectacular. And I love how you interacted with this person. Or when I, by the way, when I was, even as your dad, I was having a down day yesterday and you came and asked me, how are you doing? And
Yeah.
I could tell like you really cared for me. I love how you care for people. And so I really feel like and when, by the way, there's, songs written about this, right? Movies written about this. It's our desperate need is to have the admiration of the admirable, meaning our parents, first and foremost. We were meant to be raised, not just provided for. That word raised means what? Rise.
Mm.
We were meant to have someone cause us to rise in our own uniqueness. I don't want my kids to be like me. Can you imagine if, parents and other leaders and stuff were like, don't be yourself. I want you to be just like me because I'm good and I'm better. Well, what in the world is that all about, right? No. It's I want you to shine in your unique brightness. I want you to be by the way, I'm gonna tap on something here that I love the word fulfillment. And to me, that word has shifted. So I'll be really vulnerable here.
Please.
Um, Much of my life, Brandon, I wanted to, um, and I didn't know it, but I just felt so hollow inside. I wanted other people to notice my accomplishments. So
Hmm.
when I got some, and I didn't know it. I'll be honest, I really didn't. I I've got a few records. I've sung at different places. In fact, I'm looking at a non-disclosure agreement on my wall that I can't even talk about a place I sang that was like a pipe dream.
Wow.
In the past, I would have so desperately wanted to mention those things, or I've got products in some retail stores, and it was really about becoming someone, or at least not being a nobody.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if you can relate to that, but
Yes.
for me it was kind of this desperateness. And so here's the funny thing: after really understanding authenticity, the author, and having a sense of authority in my own life as to predetermining these things of who I am and who um, I'm not looking for fulfillment anymore. I'm bringing the fullest expression of myself to experience fulfillment. But that might be right now with you. I'm hoping it's with my wife and kids later. Parker's coming home from college tonight.
Cool.
And, I've got a couple of other calls I got to be on today, but I'm not looking for someone else to dub me as you're finally good enough. You've arrived. You know what? And again, I'm a Christian, and I've got the utter delight, the eternal pleasure of the one who made me. And he made me, I'll say it this way, he made me of just nothing but awesome. And you and everybody else that I see, and I tell everybody that you're made of awesome. I got that from my buddy David Ash. And um, so that question mark is gone. But here's what's beautiful, right? I'm human. And yes, to love and to be loved by somebody, for someone to say, hey, David, I see you showing up in that way, and it's fantastic. You know what I mean? That, of course, that feels good. But in the past, uh, I was looking for that place in my soul.
What's up, Be Better family? It's Brandon Eastman here. And as a thank you for tuning in to the Be Better broadcast, I want to give you a very special gift. For a limited time, you can get a free digital copy of my book titled Be Extraordinary, Your Guide to Self-Mastery. This book is packed with insights and actionable steps that will help you to unlock your fullest potential in the 5 key areas of your life. But that's not all. Along with the book, I also want to give you the audiobook version absolutely free. Imagine having the power to transform your life right at your fingertips and in your ears anytime, anywhere. Go grab your copy at bebetterindustries.com/book. You'll also find the link in the episode show notes. Go and grab your copy and join me in making a positive impact on the world. Now back to the show. When did you transition to this new way of being where you're not seeking the approval or the accolades of others for what you've done? Because I do relate to that. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, so let me be real clear here. I am absolutely human, and there's days and moments where I kind of slip into that. Right?
Sure.
There's no utopia here, but at the same time, it's a progression, right? I'll be 50 next month, and really, um, really succinctly, probably in the last 5 years, kind of started maybe 10 years ago, where I started to I just started hanging out with some people who actually asked better questions and had a lot more wisdom around some things.
Mm.
And that, there was this weird head game and dance going on. Um, and they just started kind of removing some of that stupid game. And you know, again, I'm not going to tell someone else, what to believe and think and so on. But for me personally, I had to reconcile everything from, before I was born, right? Eternity and what I believe about that creator and what he authored in me and what he authored in everybody else who I think is, an image bearer, right, of God, who intrinsically has absolute, like infinite worth, but that includes me. Well, that informs now absolutely everything that I see, taste, and touch. There, to me, when I'm tracking, right, and again, I'm human, but on days when I feel like I'm tracking and I'm present, there's not many mundane moments, and there are no mundane people. And I think I'm probably stealing that from C.S. Lewis or something. But but I mean, truly, when I'm standing in front of somebody, I feel like I'm just mining for gold
Mm.
because I know it's there, and most of the time nobody has ever had anybody mine for gold in them. They don't even know there's gold inside of them. They're in survival mode. They've been beat down, dragged down, lulled to sleep from social media, marketed to death, to the point that they think that unless I am number one fastest runner in the world, or whatever it is, I'm a nobody. And by the way,
Mhm.
right, like I was thinking when I said that, I said runner, but I was thinking swimmer. Michael Phelps, right? More gold medals than anybody, and he almost killed himself.
Wow.
And so, how do we know that this extrinsic accomplishments and stuff does not solve the intrinsic problem? Proof's in the pudding, whether it's Elvis or Michael Jackson or anybody else, or me for that matter. I was at one point 344 pounds
Wow.
and just racked with anxiety, and I had no idea what was going on. And I'm just so grateful that you know I'll put it this way, and this is what I believe, right? Nobody else has to believe this, but I believe that there is a larger story going on, and that the author is writing a story not only for himself, but through me for the good of others. And
Mm.
because I started just to believe that and kind of enter into that flow, everything shifted, everything changed, and the pressure is off. He's writing the story. I'm a son who's just acting in accordance with the great stuff that he gives us to be about, and I get to just as he you know allows me to have that experience, that sense of fulfillment. I just get to splash some of that goodness wherever I go. And again, no utopia here. We're human, but it's such a paradigm shift.
Do you believe that we're all built to serve others in some capacity?
100%. If someone says that they have a rock solid identity, and it's not about I'll just sort of say it this way: if it's not about causing other humans to flourish, you've not found your identity. Trust me. I mean, this goes from everything from the Bible to the Stoics. You will not find fulfillment unless your chief end in life is to cause the person next to you to rise.
Mm.
Period. And
Yeah.
that might look like something different, right? I mean, we got to be really careful. I'm sure you've heard this, right? This idea of we are not human doings, we're human beings. So whether I'm a welder, a vocalist, a painter, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever you want to, that's not who I am. I mean, that's a context for me to bring the fullest expression of who I am, to have a wonderful impact on the person that's in front of me. And man, I tell you, you start acting in alignment with that paradigm and seeing other people as precious. Everything shifts. And it's not because I want to feel a certain way. It's because it's true, like gravity. It's because they are. And if your whole life is built around building an identity so that you can stare in the mirror and stare at your own belly button the rest of your life, yeah, good luck with that.
I love that. Okay, so I know a lot of people who, you mentioned people are still, we're focused on self-actualization, especially through our teenage years and into our early 20s. But I know a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, even their 50s and older
Yeah.
who they don't know necessarily who they are. They don't know what they want to do. And a lot of people phrase it in the way of, I want to find my purpose, but I'm not sure what my purpose is. And generally, when people are saying, I want to find my purpose, it means I don't know who I am or what I'm meant to do.
Right.
So you mentioned questions earlier. Maybe there's another way, but how do you help people to dig for gold and find out who they really are?
Right. And I mean, obviously that's the process to do that is a bit longer. We take people through kind of a weekly curriculum to help them establish that. We actually do that with individuals and corporations to find a corporate identity, which has been
Okay.
really, really fun lately. So what's interesting though is it's not like so there's I think Dr. Andy says that there's like 3 different parts of authenticity, and it's understanding what do you value most of all, what are those core values and so on. And then it's this idea of yeah, establishing that self-awareness, right? This is who I am, this is who I'm not, this is what lights me up, this is what makes me laugh, cry, goosebumps, all that stuff. And then what is it that's kind of motivating to me, meaning when I do certain things, it feels really great, and again, I feel like there's, for instance, let me just kind of paint a little bit of a picture, and this is no pun intended. An artist, right? If you're gonna, well, here, how about this? A song. You and I, we're both vocalists and writers. So if you decide I'm going to write a song, for this particular person, you've got a friend who's going through a real hard time, but that song is going to have an impact on thousands because it's a common issue, right?
Mm.
But you do it in your way. You choose your language. You choose your tempo, your music, your melody, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the courage, by the way, to go knock on their door and say, hey, I know you're going through a hard time. Can I play this song for you? And you sit down, you actually take action. Part of it is because you already know what motivates you, because what motivates you is using your uniqueness to cause someone else to flourish, to grow, to heal. And at the same time, the third part of authenticity then is using your strengths, as it were, right? A vocalist or writer, whatever that might be, using those intrinsic strengths to have a virtuous impact on someone. So values are internal, virtues are outward focused. So when you go, have that experience with somebody, you show up, you sit on their couch. When you're done, here's what's beautiful about that. I'll just use the word, they were blessed, right? They were just like, man, holy smokes, this guy, Brandon showed up in my living room to speak to something that is so painful to me. He did it in a way that was so tied to his uniqueness, using his strengths. But here's the funny thing. You walk out of that house and you got a lump in your throat. You walk out of that house with such a sense of fulfillment because you used your values, your outward focused virtues, your strengths, your heart, your authenticity to fashion something, right? That's tangible, touchable, to have an impact, literally, a dent in the universe kind of thing on someone else's soul.
Yeah.
But we can do that by building beautiful skyscrapers, writing songs, building a 3-story, spiral staircase like my dad used to do for people that they can enjoy, in their homes and stand there when it's installed and look at them and be like, wow, isn't this great? And watch the grandkids run up and down it. It's all of those things. But I think what quite often we get the cart before the horse meaning we start using strengths. And this is what I did early on. It was way more, I was told early on, David, you've got one of the best voices in the world. And
Mm.
honestly, I'm grateful. I can stand on a stage with anybody. When Andrea Bocelli was here at Bridgestone, where you went to the hockey game, by the way,
Yeah.
they called and asked if I'd sing backup for him.
Cool.
And but here's the funny thing. I got the cart before the horse for so long because I thought that my voice was kind of who I am. And I actually had to get the applause of others in order to become somebody, or at least not be a nobody.
Yeah.
And guess what? I don't give two rips about that anymore. Like I said, we did a house concert the other day, completely surprised at the response, but we got to stand in somebody's, living room and sing everything from Unchained Melody to
Nice.
some classical songs. And I look out there and I saw people hold, halfway through a song, you'd see a husband grab his wife's hand because it was a can opener to their soul right then. It was like, man, this is great. He's opening something up in me here that I needed, and it caused me to reach over and grab her hand. One of the guys, by the way, his wife has battled cancer for years, and he reached over and grabbed her hand, and they kind of made eye contact. And
Wow.
that, to me, that's the absolute height of me acting in my authenticity.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Beautifully said.
I love this. You can tell I get really passionate about this because I think that most people are frustrated, apathetic, avoidant, angry. Um, look at the rates of depression and anxiety. It's
Yeah.
off the chain. And I'll be honest, again, this is, you get to choose what you believe about eternity. I don't think they know the author. They don't believe the author is good and kind. And
Mm.
therefore they don't believe that their own authenticity is even worth a lick. And they're in absolute survival mode. But when I started to really believe that the author is magnificent and he's noble and he's good and he's entered into this world that is in a world at war, right? And he's writing a story through me that is noble, good, and kind and lovely and pure. I get to pass that on to my wife and my kids. I get to pass that on to you.
Yeah.
I'm made of it, brother. I'm absolutely made of it. And when I act in that, that alignment, I'm getting goosebumps right now, even talking about it. Talk about a clue.
Yeah.
Right? Talk about a clue. Are you kidding me? And in the past, I'd get up and I'd just be kind of white knuckling life. We don't have to do that.
Yep. Yeah. I feel that we know these things innately about ourselves when we're children, but when we enter the working world, when we
Yeah.
get a job, and then we have a family, and then we have bills to pay, and we're in survival mode. It's difficult to look at things from a different perspective, or as you say, from your own unique lens, to really live in what brings you life, to live in the questions you ask, like what motivates you, what lights you up, what are your strengths, right? What are your values? What are your virtues? How can you express those?
Yeah.
When we stop doing those things, that is when anxiety and depression sets in.
It's crazy. It's absolute craziness. And what's weird is I feel like there's no real framework, to understand some of these things. Everybody just thinks that they're these elusive woohoo kind of, terms that everybody's throwing around, and you got to generate your own identity. You got to just really white knuckle it and fabricate something and, dress up like somebody else and become somebody else because who you are is not good enough. Are you kidding me? Can you imagine telling your own kids that? Yeah, you're not good enough. You need to really try hard to be somebody else. That is exactly what I think, is the message that we're being marketed to, that you're not good enough and you're more than enough. And by the way, I want to say something else. So, and I appreciate you mentioning the book. I'm writing a book right now called The Guardians of Grit. And why is grit so important? Because life is freaking hard and you need some grit under your feet in order to do hard things over a long period of time, because what you've predetermined, right, based on who you are, as to what's on the other side of that hill is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
And here's where, like, the word resiliency, right, and grit, a lot of people don't understand that. They're really simple. Resiliency is just about bouncing back, but it's bouncing back not to a what, it's a who. When you've predetermined, right, the circumference of that ball, as it were, was it basketball is bounced on the ground, and it bounces back to that predetermined shape, you can literally measure it like a GPS coordinate. You can do that with yourself. So when you start, again, intrinsic versus extrinsic, when you've dialed in, you have radical clarity on your uniqueness. Well, then resiliency looks different, joy looks different, purpose looks different. What you're willing to really struggle for looks different because it matters to you. And most of the time, we've not been asked the right questions, and we've just not assigned meaning, to what we're about. But I'm really passionate about, especially dads and men in general. I just think it's, you will never, ever, ever hear someone say these words: I sure wish that guy didn't lead with so much joy, conviction, and passion and courage. You'll never hear it. You're never, again, you might hear some knuckleheads on the internet, talking about stuff, but can you imagine any child or even woman, in a sane capacity, look at, ever utter those words: I wish my dad didn't lead with such joy and courage and clarity and compassion.
Yeah.
When men lead, how about this? When men serve, when men get low to lift others up because they're strong and they're fulfilled, everybody wins. Everybody.
Yeah.
But guess what? When they don't, everybody loses. And I'm on a mission to help fathers establish that radical plumb line, that clarity for themselves, and then ask the right questions to their kids. And whether you're a coach or whoever it is, hold up that mirror, smile at that younger person and say, you are made of awesome. Let me tell you what I'm observing here that's really good. And you start, inspiring, which means to, breathe life into, some scared little hearts, because they're just wanting to dare believe that those things that give them goosebumps and the things they care about are really worthwhile. They need to be raised. They need to rise into who God made them to be. And that's the job of an adult. It's to cause others to rise.
So the Guardians of Grit, when will this be released? And what is the main message that you are transferring through this book?
Yeah. So maybe a couple of things here. And again, I'm still writing it, but I would say that your life is built upon decisions, right? Whatever you do this morning is going to affect this afternoon. Whatever you do today will affect tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, your entire life. Decisions matter. Well, how do you make decisions in a much more peaceful, wise, place? It really comes back to, just that intrinsic self-awareness. So in essence, kind of with that umbrella, it's the greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own. It's jumping into the deep end of the pool with somebody and mining for gold, because we all wanted somebody to do that for us. It's naming, it's validating, it's shining a spotlight on those greatest things that start popping out in somebody and being like, hold on, I see that, and that is freaking awesome, dude. That is, I just love that you said that or did that, or man, I could tell by the way when you said that you got a lump in your throat. Tell me more about that. That was a clue. That means something to you. God, that's great. Let's go for it. Let's get it out on the table and write about it.
So when should we see The Guardian of Grit released?
So I'm kind of padding it just a little bit. I'm really hoping we've got it out in July. So it's going to be more. It's going to be more of a smaller ebook initially, and then I'm probably going to write a larger treatise, if you will, on what does it mean to be a guardian.
Cool. That's beautiful, brother. I love everything you stand for. I love what you're helping others discover in themselves, and you only know this because you've discovered it in yourself. And I think something powerful happens when you become a parent and a father, and you start to understand yourself in an even deeper way as you help them understand themselves. But like you said, we don't really, in a way, have to help them understand who they are, because we already intrinsically know that. It just starts to disappear later in life. But I love these strategies, and these, not even strategies, but more so these questions that you've posed that will help us to understand who we are. how we want to serve others, and the importance of serving others. So where can other people follow you, David, to really to see all the updates on the book, to see everything else you're up to? Where's the best place to tag along with you?
Yeah, so just go to my website, davidask.com. By the way, I should have told you this. My last name is actually pronounced Osk.
Oh, okay.
But it's davidask.com. And my Stat Guard Plus, you can go to my website for if you're interested in covering your thermostat and saving some energy. It's statguardplus.com, or the new one we just launched is called lockboxpro.com. But anyway, I like to tell people, go to davidosk.com, send me a message if there's something that I can do for you. No strings attached. Let me know and I will do my best.
That's beautiful. David, this has been an awesome conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you for being a fantastic guest. Thanks for everything you're doing. I'm excited to grab a copy of your book when it comes out.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, brother. I look forward to the next time we can have you on once the book launches to talk even more.
I love that. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, I'm going to have everything in the description so you can go follow David, see everything he's about, learn more about his mission, learn more about his mastermind that he mentioned during this conversation that can help you really discover who you are. Because again, it starts with who, not why. If you took even just one thing away from this conversation with David and I, please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason we've grown to over 370 episodes, and we're on a trajectory to speak to so many more cool people. And we're only able to do that because you are the best part of the Be Better team. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again, continue to be better.